Hey guys, it has been absolutely ages since I made a video. I don't want to make tons, but I do. My goal is to be somewhat consistent in putting out videos every so often and continuing to post. So it's been on the back burner. We've had a lot of change in our life. We moved to Pakistan. We moved to new country, new place here. We had Jalem, our son. He was born. We spent some time in the NICU because of that and whatnot. So it's been kind of a crazy months now. Half a year almost. It feels like a long time. And we're just settling into a rhythm now here. And painting is one of those things that I'm hoping to get back into a routine more. But at the same time, I'm juggling that with being a good dad and doing a good job at my work. And both of those kind of at the end of the day take priority for me. So you guys, for today's video, I wanted to talk through my process for setting up a watercolor palette, kind of the iterations that I have gone through to get up to this point, and where I'm going in my next palette that I'm currently making. I probably won't actually get to doing it in this video, but I'll give you my thought process for where I'm going. So, number one, to start off with, very first thing that I did when I got introduced to introduced and jumped into watercolor was to order a set of Royal and Langnickel paints. I think there was like 18, 20, I'm not sure. There was a bunch of colors, bought them. I was really happy with them. As far as colors go, I use Daniel Smith now, but I really liked the Royal and Langnickel. There wasn't a huge problem with the quality. Paper makes a huge difference with the paints. Those were fine. I like Daniel Smith. I'm loving Daniel Smith that I'm using now. So that's where I started. And there were a few things that I found. So I kind of found I fell into a few colors that I really liked, and then some colors I didn't use. I did find it sometimes overwhelming having so many colors, because I had a bunch of reds, a bunch of blues, a bunch of, I think there was at least one, if not two purples, and 2 or 3 yellows. And so I just sometimes felt a little bit overwhelmed by the amount of choice that I had, which led me into limited palette. So for limited palette, basically the idea is limiting yourself down to a restricted set of colors. If that is not your deal, if you like to have a color for everything out there, probably don't watch any further, because this is kind of about how to set up a palette that is limiting yourself to a certain number of things, and then deciding which colors are you going to put in there. So with a limited palette, I basically landed on 4 reasons why you should have a limited palette. Reason number 1, so that you don't have muddy colors. So a big thing, which you could do this with any palette really as well, but a big problem in watercolor is ending up with muddy colors. And part of the reason for that is because sometimes we don't use single pigment colors. So every paint tube will have, at least with the Daniel Smith ones, they have written down on the side which pigment this is made of. So I've got a cobalt blue. It is made of pigment blue number 28. Okay, that's it. That's what's in here. Pigment blue number 28, one pigment. So whereas I have this convenient sap green that I use, it is made from nickel azo yellow, nickel azo, phthalocylene green, and is that it? Quinacridone gold. Okay, so 3 colors. I'm not sure whether the nickel azo is 1 or 2. It looks like it's just 1. So 3 colors make up this one green. So it's a convenience mix. It's pre-mixed, right? If I wanted to get the sap green, I would have to mix those 3 colors at that perfect combination, like ratio, to get this. So the question is it worth having the convenience color or not? And the answer is yes, but not always. So sap green is one of the convenience colors that I have. I try in general to stay away from them, but there are a few that I use. In general, I try to stick with single pigment colors. Why? Because when you are mixing your colors together, the less pigments that you're dealing with, the purer and cleaner your colors are going to be. So if I go and mix, for example, if I want to go mix a blue and a green, well, I mean, that's kind of a bad example, but if I wanted to go and mix 2 colors, in this case, because this is a single pigment and these are 3 pigments, as soon as I mix these two, I'm straight away going to 4 colors. So let's say, you know, if this was a convenience mix 2 that had 3 colors and this had 3, mix the 2, we're already dealing with 6 colors. And the more colors you deal with, the closer you get to making mud, basically, either a gray or a brown. So it's better to stay away from that and to deal with pure colors, single pigment colors. Jane Blundell is really good at doing that, and that was kind of where I landed first on some watercolor palettes. Reason number 2, less decision making. It's sure easier to make a decision about which red to use when you only have 2. I found with that other palette, I just had so many options that, you know, it was like, do I use this red or this red and this red or that red or this blue and that blue? I just found it too complicated, and I was spending all this time making decisions as I'm painting, which takes away time, especially when you're trying to do things quickly, which watercolor, you always have to work quickly because the water is drying as you're painting. So having limited options made my decision making way easier. Which red am I going to use? Well, I have 2. Either it's a warm red or a cool red. So you decide. This looks like this is a warm area, I'm going to go a warm red. And yeah, easy decision making. Reason number 3, learn your colors. When you have a few amount of colors and you are, you know, you may have like 2 reds in your palette, cool and a warm, you are then forced to learn those. And so because I'm using those 2 reds in all of my paintings, I'm forced then to learn, okay, what does that red look like when it's mixed with the yellow, the 1 or 2 yellows that I have? What do those reds look like when they're mixed with the few blues that I have? So you're going to take that one hue and take it a lot more places and find out how it is, just because you're only using that one. You don't have the scope that you have is much smaller. Reason number 3, 4, I don't remember anymore. To learn mixing, okay? If you want to make yourself a better artist, it does go a long way to learn how to mix and how those colors go together when you do mix them. So forcing yourself to not just get, oh, I want a purple, oh, here's a purple waiting for me. Oh, I want a green, here's a green waiting for me. And being able to mix those yourself with different colors, that's only going to make you a better artist. So that led me basically to 2 people, Jane Blundell and Liz Steele. So Jane Blundell, she has a website, she's got a blog, she's done tons of work around this thing that she calls the Ultimate Mixing Palette. And basically it's like 12, I think 13 maybe actually, colors that she has done a ton of work on to basically find the bare minimum of colors, the smallest amount of colors that you can get the most amount of colors out of, I guess. And so I'll put a link down to her website, but you can see her palette here. It's got you know, these kind of basic colors, and then her theory is with a lot of them are single pigment colors. With mixing those colors, you can then create basically any color you want. That's the idea. Being able to create any color you want with only a few colors. So that's kind of where I started. I also used Liz Steele and her palettes. She does a bunch of different work on her website as well. I'll put a link to that as well. And she had some really good information about like even the size of palette that I use, and how to set it up and everything. And so that, I just felt like that worked really well for me. And that was very much like down my alley. So I'll show you my palette. I'm just gonna turn this light up a little here. So this is my palette, very much like Liz Steele style, fit, you know, as just like her. I like popped out the rails on here, fit as many pans as I could. So and I love this palette. I still am planning to use it. I am gonna be doing my new, setting up my new palette. But I still really like this one. And I'll probably be taking it when I do like plein air painting on location and stuff, because it is so small. It's so handy. I like, you know, this is how tiny it is. But there were a few things that I just found restrictive about it. Number 1 was that I only had 1 yellow. I decided I'll just use the 1 yellow because it's a medium yellow. It's not cool, it's not warm. I can then mix red with it to make an orange, or blue with it to make a green. Well, that's great. In theory, the problem is, because of that, my yellow almost always had either orange in it or green in it. And then if I ever wanted to use just like actual yellow in a painting, I was always fighting kind of some shade like this, where it's just kind of this gross greeny, browny yellow. And so then I'd have to try to like clean off the top part of it. And it's just like, it's not helpful for me. It's good for mixing, but it's not helpful for me in my paintings. And then there was just the thing of space. For some of them, I really liked full pans. And so then I was squeezing in these different ones. I made some poor decisions. I have about like the reds, how big the reds were. I don't actually use the reds that much. I should be using them more. So there are some things like that. So those were the people that I was influenced the most with this palette. So before I go any further, the next thing we should talk about is cons. Number one, using a limited palette, especially a very limited palette, can be really time consuming. You spend a lot of time mixing colors when you could be putting colors on the paper and doing the rest of the painting, the decision making and everything else. So sometimes too little, even though your decision makings and which colors you use is now less, you spend more time mixing colors than you would otherwise. Number two, this is with a lot of things in art. There are things in art that can tend to fall into elitism or like rule following. And I think limited palette is one of those things where it can lead down to this feeling obligated, like I have to do a limited palette. I need to do as few colors as possible because that makes me really professional. And I felt some of that pressure at the beginning, where it was just kind of like, I can't, using convenience colors is cheating. I need to be able to make it all my own. I need to be able to do this and whatever. I think things like, it's the same deal with like using black. You don't use black because you have to mix your own, which all of those things, there's truth to them. There's reasons why that kind of ideology has come about. And I agree with most of it, but I never want to be driven by other people's expectations or the like art expectations of this is what you need to do to be a great artist. The reality is you do you, and however that is. And if that means using convenience colors, if that means using black and you want to do that, there's no rule. That the biggest part of art is like you learn the rules and then you break them. So I don't like that you feel beholden to those things. Number three, it can be really restrictive sometimes. So there are times when, with this palette, for example, I really like turquoise blue and I wanted to fit one in here and I don't have space. So I am restricted just by like the real estate that I have in this little palette here. And so for me, I was like, even though I want to be really utilitarian and efficient, I also feel like I do want to fit in some of these colors that I love and I can't. So something has to change. The other thing is I recently did a workshop with Amit Kapoor, who I love Amit Kapoor. I got to do this virtual workshop. We did 2 paintings. One of the paintings that we did, he used a lot of this yellow and lavender. And the yellow he was using was it was kind of like hence a yellow deep. So it was a very warm yellow, which I have, but I hadn't put it like this is for my new palette. And so all I have is this kind of medium yellow. And so every time he said yellow, okay, now we're gonna use yellow. That meant that I then had to go yellow, and then I would put a little bit of red, which would always overpower it, and it was like crazy reddish orange. So then I had to go back, put more yellow, tone it down. That's just when he says yellow, that's what I had to do. And then he would say, okay, we're gonna mix it with this lavender. Well, I don't have lavender, I don't have purple, and lavender is a light purple, so I would go quinacridone rose, which is kind of like a magenta-ish color, and ultramarine, and mix up with my own little purple, try to keep it light, mix it with the yellow that I just mixed, and now I have 4 different colors, and so all of them could be, more or less. And then partway through the painting, if I ran out, I had to then mix all of those 4 again. And so I'm trying to keep up with, he's like amazing. We painted for 2.5 hours, and I'm going as fast as I can just to keep up with him. And every time he's like, all right, we're gonna go yellow and lavender, I'm like, so for me, it was kind of an eye-opener as far as like, I am, yes, great to push yourself in your mixing, etc. But if that's the effect that it has, not that that's always, I was following his painting, so it would be different if it was my own. but it was just revealing in that like sticking to a limited palette doesn't always make your life better, and it doesn't always make you a better artist. And so it kind of made me realize there's a few of those colors that like I'm willing to have. I'm willing to break the rules and put them in my palette. So that leads me basically to now. I should say I have been very influenced by a bunch of artists that I follow. I would say some of the biggest ones would be people like Ahmed Kapoor, Alvaro Catagnet. I've seen their palettes, the colors that they use. In the case of someone like Alvaro, you know, his palette is available. You can buy, well, his signature set of colors or whatever through Daniel Smith. They're beautiful, but for me, I had to look at them and say, that's not really me. And I love the way that Alvaro paints, but it's not me. I'm probably closer to Ahmed Kapoor as far as like the colors and maybe style. And so that's been a part of what I've had to realize is like, who am I? And that's my question that I guess I'm saying to you guys. So when you are setting up a palette, some questions that you need to ask are, who am I? What do I, how do I approach the medium? How do I approach art and watercolor? And what's my personality? You know, if you love, so for me, blues have been like, I love blues. And I can't help but buying more blues. I think I have 4 or 5, maybe 6 on my palette. And I love them. And I just had to say, you know what, I could limit myself and be like, no, I've got to, you can't have that many blues. You're supposed to have this, you know, stick to a certain regimen. But at the end of the day, I had to go, you know what, I really do love this. And so that's me. And that's part of who I am. For me, I have like two reds maybe. I just don't use a lot of red. I think I need to push myself more in using more red, but I had to come to terms with who I am. So that's my question to you. Who are you? What's your identity as an artist, and what do you like? And that would be the second thing. What kind of colors do you like to use? If you really love to use a color, don't feel pressured to use something else because it's a limited palette. This Hansa Yellow Deep has been, I've been using Hansa Yellow Medium the whole time. I keep coming back to this. I'm just like, it's such a beautiful warm yellow. I really want to use it. And so in my new palette, I'm putting it in. I don't really care whether it's the greatest thing for mixing or not, but like, I love the color that it makes. That's worth something. And if all my colors have kind of a weird warm yellow tint, and there's always warm yellows, hey, that'll be my deal. So that's just how it's going to be. And then the last thing I would say is, what do you enjoy painting? If you, you know, are someone like, I love painting boats and water, so that's probably partly why I'm really into blues and having lots of blues in my palette. If you paint a lot of greenery, you may have a few different convenience mixes for greenery, or you may lean towards that. If you're like a big floral kind of painting person, you may have a bunch of reds and purples, and like, I don't have a purple in my palette. I'm happy to mix it. So that's something that I've kind of come to terms with. I like mixing purples. I do not really love mixing greens, so I love to have a go-to green that I can just pull out of my palette and use easily. But I also know that if I always use that green, it's going to be very one-dimensional. So I need to find ways to use other greens as well. So if you've answered those 3 questions, who are you, what do you love, and what do you love to paint, then you've basically landed where I am, which is having somewhat of a knowledge of colors, pigments, a limited palette, wanting to do that, and yet still having opinions and passions about certain colors and wanting to break the rules and being like, I really love that color, and I don't care that I have 4 blues, 5 blues. I really like it, and I want a way to make that meet what I know to work about limited palettes. So if you're there, which who knows where you are at, one of the people that I've used, or an example that I've used for this, is this palette here by Lydia MakePeace. And basically I just really like the way that this breaks it down, as far as basically you need a warm and a cool color for both colors, for each set of colors, some earth tones, you need some sort of a purpley red to make your purples and whatnot, I mean a magenta red. And so I have kind of landed on this and going through and saying, I need a warm and I need a cool. I started off with just one yellow that I could then take both ways. I've decided I'm not going to do that. I'm splitting my yellows. I'm going to have a cool one, I'm going to have a warm one, and kind of taking this as a skeleton and then going from there. And if I want to have more colors of a certain kind, go ahead, have them. So that's where I'm at right now. So to finish off, you guys, I'll show you a little video of my new palette. I can show you it here. It's really nice. Oh, I have to hold it in the light, right? It's got these little stars, kind of like purpley galaxy feel. When I ordered it, I'm pretty sure it was just like the picture or whatever it was just supposed to be like this, which I thought, well, a bigger version. I love this one, but you can see, you know, pretty much double the space. But yeah, it came like this, and I was kind of like opened it up and was a little bit surprised, but I love it. It's really nice. So definitely a fan. I will show you. Okay, so I'm trying to do this as best I can with my easel and everything set up. So you can see my new palette here. Okay, so it's got, I don't actually know, I know there's 7 up there, and I think there's 11 spots down here if you count this one, which I haven't used yet. Got my colors laid out, so you can see I kind of started with the yellows because that's kind of where we go. Cool, warm from there. Back here, I kind of stuck with my earthy colors, so you can see, well, neutral tint, and then raw umber, burnt sienna, yellow ochre, so kind of the earthy triad, minus blue, you know, but you got kind of a yellow and a red, and then a couple, my convenience, sap green, buff titanium. I don't really use that much. I tried it out. I thought it was kind of a fun color for some sand, but honestly I almost prefer the yellow ochre for sand color anyway. And then my like a phthalo green and turquoise. I really wanted to bring turquoise into my palette, and that's something that I didn't have in my other one, but you know, I'd love to put them down here, but there's just not really room, and then I'd have to bump something up, so I'm not really sure about that. And the nice thing is I can play around, because these are not set, I can play around with where they are before I go and make them semi-permanent. What I'm going to do to make them permanent, which is what I did in my other palette, is just put a piece of sticky tack underneath, so that those can get stuck down. And you can see, yeah, you can see here, I left the one side, I left a tray in. This whole thing comes out, pops out, try to do that. So I left the tray on the one side in. So these are all gonna fall out if I do this. And then on the other side, these are all Meeden. I just bought them off of Amazon. I kind of think I got them all at the same time. Hopefully these won't fall out. This tray, I just popped it off. I'll show you the actual, here's the actual piece that I pulled off. So it used to be attached like that. And this is a nice little, I think Liz Steele, she says like her dad does it or something. And I can't remember if he drills it out, but anyway, they're actually pretty easy to pop off. All I did is put a screwdriver, put it underneath, and then just gave it a nice little yank, and the whole thing comes off. I thought about doing that to both sides, you know, if I wanted to double up like this the whole way along, but honestly that's more colors than I need, and I didn't want to have that possibility because it would just encourage me to hoard colors. So you can see the bottom. Once I get this all put in, it probably isn't going to come out. You can, you know, pull this out, have this on the side, use this as extra mixing space if that's your thing. I don't really do that. As it is, I've been using that other palette which only has like 2 mixing wells, and it's worked pretty well for me. And this one, you know, this one's got like 4 mixing wells here now, so underneath you can see that. So that's my that's another kind of reason that I wanted to upgrade to a bigger palette, was for the mixing wells to be able to have a little more mixing space. So I typically like to do kind of a warm and a cool side. So I might be mixing like cool colors here, warm color. I used to just do warm and cool because I only had the 2. But now I can, you know, kind of go like a blues, yellows, maybe earthies, and then I'm not having to go and clean it out anytime I want new vibrant colors, which is nice. Hope that was helpful for you guys. I am not an expert when it comes to watercolor or palette making or anything like that. There's lots of people that I have reading and videos that I have done to know what I have. And so what I just wanted to pass on is my own journey, where I'm at. Maybe you're in a similar space somewhere along the process. And for me, it was a process that I kind of had to go through, and that's fine. And at the end of the day, I think for me, it was helpful to come back and land on, there are some rules you need to know and some things that would be helpful to helpful guidelines when you're going into making a palette. But at the end of the day, do what you love and be the person that you are, and then get good at being that person as an artist, and I mean as a person as well, of course. So yeah, I hope that you enjoyed it, and I'll see you in the next video whenever that is. And in the meantime, have fun painting.